with a fickle mind, we kicked the nipple beer, steady as a goat, we're flying over trout, ghetto down the highway at the speed of light. All I wanna feel now is the wind in my eyes, sack of monkeys in my pocket, my sister's ready to go. Hear the engines roll now, idiot control now, hideous control now, Nitty on the road now, Mitty in control, wheels on fire, burning rubber tires.
Hello and welcome to the MSTieCast. I am Toby Mobius, here with Joshua McLeod.
Hola, bienvenue.
And welcoming back Chris Cornell from MST3K Info Club.
Hi.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm getting to be a regular. I'm going to straighten you guys out yet.
I don't know, Fred's been trying.
We will see about that.
And this is our 20th episode. Yes, 20 episodes of the MSTieCast. 20 episodes of us talking about, well, a lot of things, but sometimes Mystery Science Theater.
I can't believe we made it.
I can't believe we did either.
Tonight's our top 5 show, where we discuss our top 5 favorite episodes of Mystery Science Theater 3000. So how we're going to do this, for those of you listening at home, is we're each going to list our top 5, and then we're going to break for someone else's list from you guys who submitted, and then we're going to go to 4, take another break for more listeners, 3, 2, and so on until we get to number 1. We chose lots to determine who goes first, and Toby, that would be you.
Alrighty then. Well, picking up my list here, I did some shuffling around my list. I had several episodes to choose from because I've been a fan of the show for a few years, and I haven't seen every episode, but I'd at least say most episodes. And my 5th top pick of MST3K is episode 501, Warrior of the Lost World. This is an interesting movie. Normally this was actually going to be higher on the list, but the more I thought about it, the more it really had to be number 5. As far as MST3K movies go, the movie itself isn't terrible. There's certainly been worse movies and certainly worse movies in this genre of Mad Max style ripoffs. The acting, it can be bad to non-existent, but it's passable for what this is. Some of the locations are pretty well shot. I like how the Evil Empire is designed, and their logo and their dress code and their stuff. I like how it all looks. And for a film shot on a very low budget, it looks pretty decent for what it is. And, of course, Mega Weapon. I mean, come on. It's got Mega Weapon in it.
Absolutely.
I can't believe that guy didn't do anything else.
And versus Kambata.
And as for the MST3K episode itself, the host segments were just great. Where the warrior doesn't have his license and he fails his driving exam, that's hilarious. Joel really nailed it in that episode. Crow was great as the warrior's mom. And as a puppeteer, I really love the slot car sketch because for the longest time, I kept watching it and I keep going, how did they do that? That's really great when a show that's ostensibly a puppet show does something that I couldn't figure out.
Yeah, that one baffled me too.
Did we ever figure it out?
No, I still haven't figured it out. I just stopped thinking about it.
All right.
I should have really just relaxed. Of course, the bittersweet hearts that Joel creates as his invention exchange, those have since become a real thing. I see those at like CVS pharmacies around Valentine's Day. And I actually have gotten a couple boxes of them, and they taste just like normal candy hearts. They're just a little bit tastier.
Real talk.
They're a little bit tastier just because they're tinged with sadness. Nothing makes candy better than the tears of children. Shouldn't have said that.
No.
And that was my top 5 pick.
All right. I drew the lot number 2, so I guess I'm up next. My number 5 is from season 6. It is one movie in a trilogy of movies from a certain director by the name of Coleman Francis, and it is Red Zone Cuba. And I think this one kind of gets a lot of flack because a lot of people would put this at the bottom of the trilogy. A lot of people would say Skydivers and Beast of Yucca Flats is better. I think this one's the funniest because it's just so depressing. It's so dark, it's so sad, and they just make it work. And you know when they were watching it and when they were writing their riffs, they were having a hard time. They were just like, when is this going to be over? And I listened to an interview with Kevin Murphy, and he said that this was the worst movie they ever did, in his opinion.
Yeah, I personally believe this is, anybody who says, Manos is the worst movie ever, they haven't really seen this one. I really think this is the worst movie MST3K ever did.
I would put it up there. I mean, and there's stuff that's cut out where Coleman Francis kills a bunch of people, I think before the movie starts, and Kevin Murphy said it best. It's literally, he just filmed himself killing a bunch of people in it one day and sold it as a film. That's this movie. And it took me, I think 6 or 7 viewings to figure out what the plot was. It's great. It's filmed in depresso vision. Just makes you sad. And that bouncy, upbeat song they sing at the end of the episode really brings it up at the end. Really makes you happy. But, I mean, who else other than Coleman Francis could have directed a movie like that? Some of the best host segments, I think, is Mike turning into Carol Channing, but not at all committing to the role. Just being like, yeah, I'm Carol Channing. And the lottery sketch, because lotteries were becoming a big thing at that time. And my favorite riff from that episode is when the cops come and they find Anthony Cardoza and the other guy, and they're telling them about Coleman Francis and how he's wanted. And they're like, yeah, we haven't seen him. And then the cop says, there's a $1,000 bounty on his head. And then Servo says, he's over there! I just love that joke. But that's my number 5.
Okay, my pick is Fire Maidens of Outer Space. Just one of those things that one of those episodes I just love. First of all, the movie itself, it's one of those rocket ship movies. And I love those rocket ship movies. I just love them. So those are always a lot of fun. I always enjoy any of those. And in addition to all of that, of course, we have the wonderful Timmy the Dark Crow host segment, which are just classics. One of the best running host segment series that they ever did. And the movie itself is such a wonderful. There's all that wonderful padding in it that goes on forever, and of course all the girls running around in short skirts. You can't not like that. So that is my pick for number 5.
Alrighty. Well, I think we're off to a good start. Let's go to some listeners.
Hey MSTieCast, it's Justin W, aka Etrigan Blood, bringing you my top 5 Mystery Science Theater 3000 episodes. Alright, you're going to notice a trend in my favorite episodes. They do all tend to be 80s color movies. And that's not, I don't hate all other movies, these just tend to be my favorite. They are the best riffed mainly because, they are closest to the time period and you can make a lot more jokes about them. So let's, without further ado, let's move on to my number 5 pick, Warrior of the Lost World. Unfortunately, this is my only Joel episode on the list. However, there's a lot of them really close to the top 5. This movie overall is just pure B-movie sci-fi goodness, and I love it for it. It's got Donald Pleasance, it's got sweet-looking vehicles, and I could really watch this movie on its own. But the MST3K commentary makes it so much better. I love this movie from beginning to end, and I love the episode even more. So, with that being said, let's move on to number 4, The Puma Man. Now, I'm a huge comic fan, and seeing the Puma Man is, well, it's shameful. It is a disgrace to comics and superheroes everywhere, and to have MST3K rip it apart is one of the greatest joys in the world. Once again, Donald Pleasance shows up as the cheesy bad guy, and I just cannot stop loving this episode. In one phrase, Puma Man flies like a dork, and that sums up the episode right there, guys. It's nothing more, nothing less. Alright, let's move on to number 3, Squirm. Alright, we've done our sci-fi, we've done our superhero, now let's move on to the horror genre as we once again get some great B-movie action in this one. Everything, the special effects, the acting, the writing itself is just god-awful, and that's what makes this movie so fantastic. It's another one that I could watch on its own, and the MST3K commentary just makes it awesome. It was the beginning of the farewell for the MST3K gang during Season 10, and it really was one of the top-notch episodes that was in that season. Also, the No Springs short is in there, and that is my all-time favorite short. It's just hilarious. Coily, and his army of darkness, they are coming. Be prepared. Alright, let's move on to number 2, Time Chasers. I know you interviewed the director of this movie, but this still is a pretty bad movie. Time Chasers is one of those movies you can't help but laugh at. The giant-chinned Castleton shirt-wearing protagonist just makes you laugh every single time he shows up on screen. It's Back to the Future in a plane, and it's fantastic for it. The host segments, too, also make this episode stand out, but what really shines is the riffing. The riffing in this episode is just fantastic, and I will never forget it for that. Alright, with that awesomeness out of the way, let's go on to our number 1 episode, The Final Sacrifice. Yes, The Final Sacrifice. I'm sure this is in a lot of people's top 5, because, in all honesty, this is an awesome episode. From Canada comes one of the greatest icons in American cinema, Rousdower. Yes, Rousdower. It was a phrase I'd heard on the internet just around, even before I had been an MST3K fan, and it really got me intrigued to the point where I finally had to watch this episode. But I could not comprehend the pure awesomeness, the pure middle-aged, mustachioed awesomeness that was Rousdower. He has made a huge impact in my life. I've got a shrine of him in my corner. He is God. All hail Rousdower. No, seriously though, this episode is fantastic. The riffing is top-notch. The second time I watched this episode, I completely forgot about the crazy miner guy with the really weird accent. And as soon as he showed up on screen, I could not help but laughing. Every single time I see this episode, I see something that I missed before I forgot. I'll never get tired of seeing this episode. It is truly the greatest MST3K episode, in my opinion. There's a lot of episodes that didn't quite get on the list. My honorable mentions are Gamera vs. Giron, Manos, The Hands of Fate, Santa Claus, MST3K the movie. I didn't put that on the list because it's not actually an episode. Giant Spider Invasion, Space Mutiny, Princess Space, Phantom Planet, Soul Taker, Hobgoblins, and Werewolf. Well, thanks for letting me do this, guys. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing episode 20. Congrats on that, by the way. Big achievement. You've officially made it farther than I ever did in podcasting. And I look forward to hearing your show for many years to come. Thanks for the entertainment you've provided, and ta-ta for now.
During the break, we drew more lots, and Toby, you're up again.
Well, my number 4 pick is something that I actually just added to the list today, but the more I thought about it, the more I really had to put it on the list. My pick is 821 Time Chasers. Now, as far as, and again, going back to the last one, as far as MST3K movies go, this one's actually pretty decent. Like, the future represented in the film is surprisingly accurate. As I said back in the episode where we discussed it, these are things we have now. People are riding more bikes. There are holograms that you can see in public. There's stuff like you can hack a Kinect and you can make a hologram like that. The whole touch screen fad we have now with tablets and such and smartphones. It's generally a very accurate future to what we have today, and I think that was pretty cool. The protagonists are likable. You root for them. You want them to succeed, even though it kind of is all his fault. There have been much stupider, much more unlikable protagonists in MST3K movies, as I'll get into in a minute. For a film with no budget that was made by a first-time director, the action is pretty good, the effects are decent, and the Revolutionary War battle at the end, where they go back into the past, I thought that was really cool. I thought it was really awesome that he could basically write that in. And, of course, as for the episode itself, the riffing is fantastic. The time travel sub-narrative with Crow and Eddie and Mike, that's really well done. And I like that Eddie has a very distinctive personality for Mike and makes riffs that Mike wouldn't necessarily make. A very subtle touch in the riffs, but I liked it. And plus, it was just funny to watch Mike smack around the robots for a change. Of course, past Mike is great, and the other guy working in the cheese factory. I love time travel stories, so I like they put it into the host segment. So, that is my 4th favorite MST3K episode.
All right. Well, I believe I'm going to go next. And my number 4 is a season 7. It's the last season 7 episode. It's Laser Blast, the final Comedy Central episode of all time, and it's a pretty good send-off for the crew. Those aliens in that movie really have no idea what they're doing. They just sort of come to Earth, leave the laser blaster on Earth, and then they go away, and then they come back at the end of the movie, kill the guy with the laser blaster, and then they leave again, leaving the laser blaster on Earth. But it's an interesting world where cool kids get picked on by dweeby guys wearing Hawaiian shirts, and there's a lot of pool parties with cakes. That guy, the guy who directed it, Michael Ray, this is the only movie he ever directed. I wonder why. I don't know why this one does it for me. It's weird. It's like mythic because it's the final Comedy Central, but it's just so good. It's so weird. Although I think we've said this before, this would have been a weird way to end the series. So I think I'm happy that we got season 8. That this wasn't the end of the series. You have a lot of sketches about the universe, a lot of 2001: A Space Odyssey parodies, just a really, really good episode and a really kind of cheesy movie to end on. And my favorite riff is when the dweeby guys challenge Kim Milford to the race, and he says, "Let me just get in my dad's electrical supply van." And anyway, that's my number 4 pick.
Okay, and for me, my number 4 pick is the opening episode for season 6, Girls Town.
Yes.
Just lots of fun, and I have to say, I like this movie and the riffing of this movie so much. It's so funny. I think it completely overcasts what I think are some sort of fairly middling host segments. All the except for the introduction of the umbilicus and the Power Steves, which was kind of cute. But the rest of them are kind of middling and not terribly memorable. But the movie is just so wonderful. So much great stuff going on, and the riffing is just, they just come out of the box and go full blast the whole movie. I just thought it was a terrific episode, and that's my number 4.
Cool. Let's go to some listeners.
Hey everyone, I'm Laszlo, the MST guy, and I'm here with my top 5 favorite episodes of Mystery Science Theater 3000. Number 5, EGA. I mean, honestly, what's not to love about Richard Kiel running around as a caveman terrorizing Arch Hall Jr.? Now, you'll probably hear me say this a lot in this list, but the movie is just so goofy that you just have to love it. I actually met Richard Kiel about 10 years ago at a movie convention, and he honestly was one of the nicest celebrities that I've ever met, and I actually still have his autographed 8x10 EGA pic hanging in my movie room. Number 4, Mitchell. What do you get when you mix Joe Don Baker with some baby oil and Linda Evans? You get Mitchell. The first time I saw this episode, I was just getting into MST, and when Joel departed at the end of the episode, I honestly was really sad to see him leave. And despite this being Joel's send-off episode, it's one of my favorites, and it's one that I can watch anytime. Number 3, Space Mutiny. Now, this episode has to be one of the best from the sci-fi era. Reb Brown just shines in this bizarre movie space epic. I mean, the movie is just so goofy from beginning to end. The dance scene in the club with the hula hoops, and the fact that they borrowed footage from Battlestar Galactica for their space scenes, and that weird dentistry torture scene. Just, what a weird movie, but everything about this episode just works, and that's why I love it. So that's number 3. Number 2 is Cave Dwellers. I love this episode. I love the movie. The movie is just so perfect. It's so funny and goofy. The hang gliding at the end, and really, any movie that showcases Invisible Warriors, it's got to make the list. And honestly, could anyone else except Miles O'Keefe have played Ator? Really? I think the favorite part of this episode, though, is the host break, where Joel and the bots recreate the opening scene or the opening sequence. It's just amazing. It's so hilarious. So that's my number 2 pick. All right, number 1. So before I get to my number 1 episode, I want to throw out some honorable mentions because there's so many great episodes that just I couldn't put into this list. So my honorable mentions are, quickly, Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, Time Chasers, Hobgoblins, Parts, The Clonus Horror, Soul Taker, Santa Claus, The Final Sacrifice, Jack Frost, Manos, of course, Magic Voyage of Sinbad, and the series finale, Diabolic. Okay, so with that out of the way, my number one favorite episode is Pod People. I know a lot of people put Manos as their favorite episode, and it's a funny episode, and I really enjoy it, but I enjoy Pod People so much more. I mean, honestly, who doesn't love Trumpy and Tommy, the little boy? And the episode is just hilarious. I honestly think the movie was made on a very obviously it was made on a very limited budget, but I think the filmmakers were trying to cash in on the whole E.T. phenomenon that was sweeping the world at the time, and the result, was Trumpy and Pod People. And Joel and the Bots, I mean, they did a great job with this one. Honestly, from start to finish, there isn't a dull moment in the episode. And as a kid, I used to watch This Old House, so when they made those Norm Abram jokes at the beginning of the episode, I was laughing my butt off. So there you go. I'm Laszlo, the MST guy, and those are my top 5 favorite episodes.
Greetings, fellow Misties. This is Travis Hosey, the author of the Likelihood for Release list on the MST3K discussion board, and I've been asked to list my 5 favorite episodes, which is no easy task. My 5th favorite is 612, The Starfighters. The movie is one of the top the hell films, but MST manages to even make Jet's refueling and lumpy face non-action laugh out loud funny. And there's no plot, and it's still pretty consistent. The host segments are all winners to me. I really love Crow's attempts at logging on and the United Servo Academy men's chorus performance. 4th would be number 704, The Incredible Melting Man. And the movie was totally made for MST. I mean, late 70s AIP attempts at horror. And it's so bizarrely bad, and that just makes it ooze funny riffs. A little pun there. Dr. Ted Nelson, the Ojka, the Crackers, and Myron Healy. And makeup by Rick Baker. And then the things we learned from the movie in the end credits. It's just constantly laugh out loud funny for me, and I really love the 7th season. It's a pity it's only 6 episodes. The host segments really hit home the hell that BBI went through making MST the movie, and those are great, but it's the movie segments that crack me up the most with that episode. And my 3rd choice is number 406, Attack of the Giant Leeches. You can't go wrong with any of the 4th season 50s Monster Movies episodes, or any of the 50s monster movie episodes, but a giant Gila monster and the killer shrews. But this one's a bona fide classic. I mean, they all are, but it's what I call comfort episodes. The movie's watchable enough, but MST just surrounds it, makes it that much warmer and fuzzier. The Undersea Kingdom serial is a goofy appetizer to the Swampy Leech main course, and I had to choose between Godzilla vs. Megalon and this one, and that's a tough thing because I'm a huge Godzilla fan. But remembering the Hollow Clowns bit from the opening made the decision for me. That's just pure poetry. The Danger to Myself and Others song is one of my all-time favorite Joel songs, and the Insta Adolescence kit from the Invention Exchange is just totally real. And my second choice is number 507, I Accuse My Parents. And I wish MST had done more B-movie dramas like this, like High School Big Shot. They make for great riffing fodder, I think. I love the drunk folks and Jimmy's chronic lying, and it's a bit dry in spots, but it's just totally worth it. It's a great introductory episode, and it's a great short. The Invention Exchange is great, and all the host segments are classic Joel era at its best. It's just an all-around classic for me. And my number 1 favorite MST episode is by far 701, Night of the Blood Beast. And where to begin? This is my go-to introductory, and it's my pick-me-up episode, ultimate pick-me-up episode. Once Upon a Honeymoon is still one of my all-time favorite shorts, and it's right up there with Young Man's Fancy and Mr. B. Natural for me. The movie is classic Corman crap. A lot of Steve's undercupping the depressed doctor, the romance between Steve and the alien. I'm really glad Shout Factory put the whole kit and caboodle on the DVD. It's become a Turkey Day tradition for me to watch all the Turkey Day segments like that. And this is the only episode you get 2 awesome sets of host segments, and that makes it twice as epic and just twice as much fun to watch. From the regular episode, I love Crow's baby rants. Is it poop related? And then from the Turkey Day episode, the stuffing versus potatoes sketch and Pearl's turkey surprise. It just knocks me right out. Just really funny, nice, warm, fuzzy kind of an episode. Well, and those are my top 5 favorite MST episodes, and I hope to speak again on one of these newfangled podcast thingies. Cheers!
And we're back. And going next is Monsieur Josh.
Well, my number 3 has already been mentioned by someone else. It is a Season 5 episode, and we have met and interviewed the director. It's Warrior of the Lost World. Toby, you said a lot about this episode. I don't know what else I can add. You know, I told him that this is one of my favorite episodes. I wouldn't have said that if I didn't mean it. And this is a great opening to Season 5, even though it wasn't the opening to Season 5. Post-apocalyptic movie about a guy. He was in the paper chase, I think, for one season, and so what better way to point that out than to make unending jokes about him being in this movie. And of course, he's trying to save that woman from Star Trek, the motion picture, while they try to get away from the doctor from Halloween. What's not to love about that movie? Like you said, the sketches were really good. I would agree with you. I think the best sketch of that is discussing what we're going to do when the apocalypse happens. Because it is one of those questions where once the unfathomable death and destruction is over, it's like, well, now what do? You sit around all day, or do you go to Martin's and buy some maple syrup?
Hunt.
Or do you hunt for radioactive deer that are probably, that have 2 heads? But hey, I imagine that they're really gamey and they probably taste good. So, favorite riff. Remember, everybody, we're parked in level A. That's my number 3. Sampo, you're up.
Okay, my number 3 is just an episode. We're starting to get into the real... Oh, by the way, before I do this, I wanted to mention that I have a friend of mine that you're forcing me to pick 5. Mm-hmm. And I have a good friend of mine who, whenever he's asked what his favorite episode is, he quotes Mr. B. Natural and says, "The members of my family, boy, I love them all," which is pretty much my view on this. So I just wanted, for the record, known that I love them all. I'm just you're asking me to pick from among my children, but if you're making me pick, I will. And with that said, number 3 is episode 505, Magic Voyage of Sinbad. Love this episode. Just can't say enough about it. The whole segments are all wonderful. The Junior Jester Club sketches, hilarious. And then just when you think they couldn't get any funnier, the town council meeting is just achingly funny. Just one of my all-time favorite episodes. And, of course, the movie is big and fun and hilarious and all sorts of weird stuff going on. And you just got to love it. My favorite riff from that one is stock up on socks. You never know when you're going to get this chance again. So that's it.
All right. Toby, you're up.
All right. Well, my number 3 pick, you probably thought this would be higher on the list, a lot of you that know me and listen to the show. But no, this is number 3, just to keep you in suspense of what the top 2 are. My top 3 pick is episode 904, Werewolf. This film is delightfully incompetent. The makeup and effects are just laughable, frankly. I think I honestly probably could do better given $20 and a trip to Party City. The effects are bad, with the bad puppet thing. The acting pretty much across the board was pretty terrible. Though, surprisingly, Joe Estevez is probably the best actor in the movie.
Which is really saying something.
Yeah. The villain's plan was stupid. Let's make people into werewolves. Profit. The protagonists, they're boring. You could have cast a cardboard box and it would have been more engaging. And honestly, a cardboard box werewolf would have been something. Tell me you wouldn't watch that movie from like Troma or something. The score was kind of annoying with I get what they were doing with the Native American chants and all that, and as someone who is part Native American, and I'm very interested in our history, but there's only so much I can take, especially in a work of escapist fiction. And the score was just irritating, especially with that saw-sounding thing that kept punctuating the thing to keep me from falling asleep. And let's be honest, the love interest was not hired for her acting ability, or her ability to speak English. Which leads me to the stinger, by the way, is my favorite stinger for any episode. And I don't really know why. There's been funnier jokes that they've put at the end, but just the way she says, "This is absolutely fascinating," it puts me in stitches every time. The riffs are, of course, phenomenal. You've come to the conclusion, dim bones, dim dry bones, sir, which is probably my favorite riff out of that entire season. The host segments are great. Who Would You Want in Your Werewolf movie is a game that more people should play. that is a game I need to introduce at my game nights, just for the hilarious, non-existent brothers that people would have. The Were Crow subplot through the host segments was insanely funny, and combined with the very first host segment, the introduction, I liked they played around with Mike's ability for impressions and mimicry. His crow voice is really funny. I like how he's doing Bill's crow, and honestly, it kind of sounds more like early season 8 Bill's crow, where he's kind of lisping slightly. And of course, the ending, the very final host segment with Humphrey and Bobo, I thought that was just cute. That was cute. Long story short, that was my number 3. Warwolf.
Werewolf?
Werewolf.
Warwolf?
Yeah!
Let's go to some listeners.
I'm Josh Hadley from Radiodrome Lost in the Static, and the other one whose name I can't mention on this show. Big Mystery Science Theater 3000 fan. My favorite 5 episodes are, in technical chronological order, I guess, would be Phase 4. I've always loved this movie, and while the riffing isn't some of the best, the movie's good, they've got some good riffs, and it's back in that experimental phase where they really are not quite sure where the show is going, which also leads into my next favorite one, which I'm going to be surprised if anyone else has on their list, which is Hangar 18. Again, always loved the movie, and it had some pretty good riffs about, like the black astronaut. As soon as he's introduced, it's like, okay, he's dead meat number 1. It's just a really, really great movie. And then Pod People is probably the first Mystery Science Theater I ever saw that, when I was really aware of the show, I'd caught an episode here or there before, but Pod People, I think, was the very first one where I was a fan of the show, and I saw Pod People, which is also one of their just outright best episodes. It's got some of the best riffs. It's got some of the best host segments. The movie is just rife for all the crap that they throw at it. It deserves it because it's a pretty awful movie. And it's a fan favorite, and there's a reason. And then there is what I think is the all-time greatest one. Brad Jones, my Radiodrome co-host, and I fight about this all the time because he goes Pod People. I go the Giant Spider Invasion. The movie was shot near me. I've met the director. I worked with a few people who worked on that movie. And the fact that the Mystery Science Theater 3000 guys were all from Wisconsin, there was so many Wisconsin jokes in that, and I'm not trying to be egotistical about it, that I bet someone in California would not get some of the references that they threw out. I just thought it was a pitch perfect episode. That's the one that I use to introduce people to Mystery Science Theater 3000. If I meet someone today who hasn't seen an episode, I throw them the Giant Spider Invasion. I think it's that good. And then the last one is another one I'll be surprised if it's on anyone's list, is Time Chasers. I thought it was bad, but you could see that they were trying to do something. I'm talking about the movie Time Chasers at this point. You could see that they were trying to do something with it, and then the riffs were just so dead on, pointing out the minute-long 10-second countdown and things like that. It was just an absolutely hilarious episode that really rounded out what I consider the end of the sci-fi era. And then an honorable mention, if I get a 6th one, would be Parts the Clonus Horror, which was always a good one because Josh told me I can't pick the specials that I wanted to pick. He said I had to pick real episodes. Otherwise, I'd pick the 2 Golden Robot Award specials where they riffed over trailers.
And we are back. Thank you again to everybody who contributed. Really means a lot to us. Don't think that just because you weren't in the show that you can't still contribute. We'd still love to hear what your top 5 is, and maybe we can even incorporate it into a future show. We drew lots, and I got number 1 again, so I'm going to go. Here's my number 2. It's a season 10 episode. It is a premiere, and somebody in this conversation was there for the filming of it and was actually a part of the episode. It's Soul Taker. First of all, you have the return of Joel and Frank. most people would say that's what makes this episode good. I say, you know what, that's icing on the cake. If that had not been in this episode, it still would have been an amazing episode. You have a bunch of kids dying in a car accident, and you have Martin Sheen's brother. What's not to love? And if the 80s are over, then so help me, my life is over as well. I learned from this movie you shouldn't go to Summerfests, you shouldn't get into cars with guys named Brad, and that apparently your soul can take a shot from a .38 special but can't take a punch. And that the afterlife is basically run by low-level bureaucrats. This movie is just weird, and the riffing is great, because I love anything referential and anything referencing the 80s, and I think this one has about 600 references to the 80s. All of the stuff like, like, what should I wear to the Motels concert? This is really more fitting for the Thompson twins. It's the only place Whitesnake station. It's so perfect in the fact that it was like the perfect movie for them to do. Obviously, I've talked about Joel and Frank, and those are really good sketches, and Frank is a soul taker. What else were you going to do other than have Frank be a soul taker? It's just such a great episode. My favorite riff, if you can call it a riff, is probably the end monologue where we learn what probably really happened to the hero, where it turns out that he would have ended up rubbing alcohol through toasts. That's my number 2, and it's absolutely a great episode.
My number 2 pick is one that initially I wasn't going to put on the list. I had something else in its place, but like before, the more I thought about it, the more it really had to go on here, because it really is just a fantastic episode, and it just missed being number 1 once I revised the list. The very last episode of the series, 1013, it is Danger Diabolique, also known as just Diabolic. This movie, okay, I'm a huge fan of the Tim Burton Batman, and this came out well before Burton's Batman, and I can't help but think that Burton may have taken a little bit of inspiration, and here's why. You know when you see the hydraulic lift that brings the car down into the Diabolic Cave? I don't know if his lair ever actually had a name. I'm calling it the Diabolic Cave. I can't help but feeling that got put in to Batman 89, where they do that. And actually, they also do that in the Schumacher movies. Or maybe I'm thinking of just the Schumacher movies, but they do have the hydraulic lift with the Batmobile. It's a really cool image, and the set design for the Diabolic Cave is really well done. It's not straight out of the comics, and I have read the comics. It's not straight out of the comics, but it looks pretty good. It's kind of hard to like Diabolic and What's-Her-Face.
Ava.
I call her What's-Her-Face.
Okay.
She's pretty useless. She's What's-Her-Face. She doesn't deserve a name. Diabolic and Ava are just well, they're jerks. It's really hard to like them, and it's really hard to want them to win. You really start rooting for the detective. It's very much a reversal of the classic lovable bad guy, the cop you don't want to succeed. This isn't exactly Lupin the Third. It's pretty much the anti-Lupin the Third. You want this guy caught because he's getting innocent people killed. Yeah, this guy's kind of a dickweed, and you don't really feel great about the mafioso either. I mean, at least he gets a couple of funny parts where he, drops a guy out of his airplane, and he gets one of the funniest stingers ever. That's stud coming. Through it all, the riffs are fantastic, and even better, the host segments are amazing. The Earth song, To Earth, it's an earworm. I have that saved on my computer. I use it as a ringtone for the longest time. It's just a great song. It's really well written, and it's catchy as hell. The fact that Pearl was the person who caused the crew to come back to Earth is a great little twist that I didn't see coming when I first watched the episode. I knew ahead of time this was the final episode of the series, but I hadn't seen it before. I hadn't looked at a synopsis before. So the fact that it was Pearl that did it was great. The little musical riffs. Gonna go to the store, da-na-na-na-na-na. Gonna pick up some bread, da-na-da-da-da-da. I'm gonna go to the post office. Gonna practice my lick, da-na-na-na-na-na. Only 1 hour more, da-na-na-na-na-na. It's a fantastic episode. The ending where they're watching The Crawling Eye, it's a great little, hook back to the very first episode, and I really, really enjoy it. Number 2, Danger Diabolique.
And I'm up now, right?
Yes, so, Monsieur Sampo.
Oh, okay. Well, I am going to do Toby one better and make episode 904 Werewolf number 2. That's my pick. I only have a couple of things to note about it since Toby covered it very well. One is this episode was submitted for an Emmy. And it didn't win, but it should have. And Sci-Fi Channel threw a great big party in New York City at the Museum of TV and Film for a lot of press to make a big deal about this thing. And they had James Lipton there at the event. And at one point, I think the people at Sci-Fi Channel had this idea that, we're going to get James to stand up in the audience and we're going to have him ask Mike some questions. Well, unfortunately, as I understand later, I didn't know what was going on at the time, but I understand later Mike is having one of his headaches. I don't know if you're aware of this. He wrote a piece in the New York Times about his headaches. He has chronic headaches, and he was having one that night. And it's one of those that when he's having them, his skull is going to explode, and he just all he can do is just kind of smile and suffer. And he was up on stage with Bill and Kevin, and they got James Lipton stand up and start asking him the questions. Well, what's your favorite curse word? Which is one of his famous questions. And Mike said, "Well, yes, my favorite curse word. Go to hell, Mr. Lipton." It was a little. There was a kind of an awkward pause in the room. I laughed. I laughed. Brian laughed, and a few other people laughed, but not. And some of the TV critics laughed, but that was about it. Anyway, the movie is, as you said, just awful, and the riffing is just wonderful. The host segments are all great, and you've got the wonderful bit during the end of the credits with Tusk, which is just a classic of the entire series. And my favorite, okay, stop, everybody go up a shirt size.
Yes.
People say rock to me a lot.
We could go on forever quoting lines from that episode.
Look, they got harpsichord music. We really could.
Tubby Ramone. Alrighty. Let's go to commercial. Some guests were not able to submit a recording, but they were still able to submit their lists to us, so we're going to read some of those right now.
Hello all, Torgo here from the MST discussion board. I was kindly asked to contribute to this week's podcast at the top 5 episodes, and while I was unable to provide an audio file, trust me, I've heard my own voice recorded, and you're the lucky ones. I did offer them a list of my own, so you have to listen to my ramblings anyway. You're welcome. What are my top 5? Well, let's start out with the one everyone knows I am obsessed with. Number 1, Prince of Space. I usually rate MST as an experience as a whole, and I always give the movie itself a fair shake. There are those who will call me crazy, but I love the hell out of Prince of Space. Keep in mind, I grew up on Godzilla and Power Rangers, so silly Japanese crap is right up my alley. The riffing and the host segments are both hilarious, and for me, they both symbiotically bond with the film itself, making this one of the most pleasurable experiences of my entire life. Number 2, Invasion of the Neptune Men. Call it Prince of Space Light, or just plain torture, or just plain call it torture. To me, it was almost a sequel to my favorite episode. The movie, while less fun, brought a lot for the crew to work with, and I had just as much fun with it as I did with Prince of Space. And the Hitler building is hands down one of the funniest moments of the entire show. Number 3, Space Mutiny. It very much seems that I'm biased for Season 8. You'd be right. It was the year that I was introduced to the show, and I have fond memories of a lot of the episodes. Space Mutiny floored me when I first saw it, and it still floors me to this day. While I could continue on with the great episodes in this season, let's leave room for a small amount of diversity, shall we? Number 4, The Girl in Lover's Lane. Usually I prefer the wackier movies to simple dramas, so I wasn't excited about Girl based upon the title. But it took me by surprise and quickly became my favorite episode of the Joel era. The movie is a bad story poorly told, yet I'm still surprised that a certain twist towards the end remains effective despite this. As a result, I find myself fascinated by Big Stupid's Big Adventure as more than just an episode of my favorite series, but as an example of what works and what doesn't work in storytelling. Number 5, 12 to the Moon. Another goofy sci-fi flick, another Mike episode. At least this one comes from Season 5. The strange science of this movie alone makes the episode hilarious. I almost wish the actual moon landing were this entertaining, or at least as hilariously stupid as Apollo 18 at the very least. The short Designing for Dreaming is a bizarre piece of 50s retail, and serves as the perfect appetizer for the main course. Random tidbits. Favorite Josh episode, Project Moonbase. Favorite riff tracks, Cloverfield. Favorite cinematic Titanic, Doomsday Machine.
Hi, I'm Tom Noel, the creator of the website Tom's Temple of MST3K Stuff. I've been a Misty since the summer of '93 when my cable company first picked up Comedy Central, and MST3K was one of the first shows I saw on it. I was immediately hooked from the first episode I saw. I've always loved old bad movies and pop culture trivia, but there was something about their sense of humor that really just struck me. Coming up with a top 5 is really difficult because my favorites really do change all the time. Let's get one thing out of the way. I enjoy Mike and Joel episodes equally. I think because I started watching right at the same time that Joel was handing off to Mike, I developed an appreciation for both of them. They're different in delivery, but every era of the show has some really great episodes. I have favorites from Comedy Central, Comedy Channel, and the Sci-Fi Channel shows. Hell, I even really like the KTMA shows. Anyways, since I've been asked to pick a top 5, I will go with the following right now. Number 5, 319, War of the Colossal Beast, with short Mr. B. Natural. This has always been a favorite, partially because it was the first episode I ever saw. Imagine having never heard of this show before, then flipping on the TV one weekend to some bizarre man/woman dressed in blue tights prancing across the screen. Great short, great movie, and fantastic riffing all the way through. Number 4, episode 1006, The Boggy Creek 2 and the Legend Continues. Everything about this movie shouts cheese. The story, the acting, and the quote-unquote creature are consistently dopey and make for great riffing. Plus we have the snap towel boy Tim, the charming Crenshaw, and some very nice quote-unquote river bottoms. If only there was actual mud wrestling, this episode would have been perfect. Number 3, episode 301, Cave Dwellers. I love to show this episode to people who don't know the show. The sheer scope of riffs in this episode is mind-boggling. Harold Pinter, 2001, A Space Odyssey, the Solaflex, Kurosawa, and Ted Nugent. You gotta love it. How much Keith do we get in this movie? Miles O'Keefe, of course. Number 2, 820, Space Mutiny. This movie is amazing. Railing kills, floor waxer battles, wagons, and girls with armadillos in their trousers. Oh yeah, and a character who gets killed in one scene only to show up in the next. A beef slab of a hero who shrieks like a little girl. A bad guy who delivers his lines more dastardly than Snidely Whiplash. And with all of that, probably my favorite line is during a meeting with the mutinous crew where one of them says, "I see we're not all in agreement," to which Mike says in a sort of distant voice as if in the back of the room, "I disagree." Cracks me up every time. Number 1, episode 701, Night of the Blood Beast with short Once Upon a Honeymoon, specifically the Turkey Day version. I love the Turkey Day marathons and have held my own every year since the show stopped doing them. The Thanksgiving-related host segments are a lot of fun in this one. I love the stuffing versus potatoes and the I am mincemeat sketches. Our movie monster looks like a deep-fried Barney who is willing to negotiate his takeover of Earth, but prefers to run away whenever confronted. NASA seems to be a little understaffed and underfunded, and their best quality is undercupping? That's it. I hope this helps. Congratulations on your anniversary show. Thank you, Tom.
Hello, this is only other smart Alexa on Tumblr. My top 5 MST3K episodes: 1. Mitchell, 2. Humera vs. Gurren, 3. Tormented, 4. Girl in Gold Boots, 5. The Brain That Wouldn't Die, 6. Sal Taker, sorry, I had to cheat.
Well, now we have Mike Hagan with us. Thanks for coming and doing the show, Mike.
Hello.
I see you have your top 5 list. Why don't you read it for everybody?
Thank you for having me on again. I love doing the MSTieCast. Alright, here we go. My top 5 MST3K episodes are: number 5, Teenagers from Outer Space, number 4, Operation 0007, number 3, Santa Claus vs. the Martians, number 2, Prince of Space, and finally number 1, Jack Frost.
Thanks for coming on the show. You sound a little weirder than you usually do, Mike, but I'm just going to let you go rather than inquire further about it.
Yes, Josh, that would be most wise.
And we are back with the 20th episode of the MSTieCast, our top 5 episodes. And if you were just now joining us, please put rewind because this is towards the end of the episode.
We've reached the pinnacle, gentlemen.
Yes.
Our number 1, our favorite episodes.
The air is getting thin up here.
Yes, it is. We drew lots beforehand, and for the 3rd time in a row, I'm going to go first, apparently. My number 1 favorite episode is from Season 3. It is an early Season 3 episode. I have a sneaky suspicion that the folks at home already know what it is, because a lot of people cite this as their favorite episode. I absolutely agree with them. Pod People is, in my opinion, my favorite episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000. Everything about this episode is great. There is not a single moment in this episode that falls flat. You have a perfect movie. You have an E.T. ripoff. You have weird characters. You have a funky band that is clearly no business being a band. You have 7 different subplots going on. It's like American Graffiti, only it's not like American Graffiti. It's just so perfect, and it's encapsulated in a time, and it's like a perfect painting. I don't know how else to describe it, and it's perfect for riffing. It's got some of the best riffs ever. And the host segments, all of them are music-oriented, and I love music-oriented host segments. It's just a great host segment, and what better way to end an episode than to ask the poignant question as to whether or not there'll be a clown in the sky. That, in my opinion, is the best song they ever did. And what a better way. That, in my opinion, that would have been, if they couldn't have a true series finale, that would have been a good series finale, ending on will there still be a clown in the sky. If you folks at home know what the plot of this movie is, feel free to write in, because I have no idea. Perfect episode. My favorite riff, see, Trumpy, the pieces fit together. If only this film were so lucky. That's my number 1 absolute favorite. It will go down as a testament to how good Season 3 was and how good that episode was.
Alrighty then. My number 1 pick has already been mentioned, but dang if this just is not a perfect episode, in my opinion. The Season 10 opener, very last season of the series, and naturally 2 of my favorite episodes come from this season. Soul Taker. As has already been mentioned, it is noted for the return of Frank and Joel. But as you said, that is the icing on the cake. It just elevated an already great episode into perfect status. Riffs are fantastic. The total 80s-ness of the film is on full display. The jokes are great, and the guys think of a lot of things I wouldn't necessarily have thought about if I had been watching the movie, like a shotgun blast to the chest does nothing, but an iron to the head takes him out, which we did discuss a possible answer to, but that still doesn't fix all the plot holes. You'd need a whole cement truck, and then some. The jokes are spot on. Joel coming back into the role was just... It's like he hadn't really left. He just fit back into the role like a glove. The fact that he did pyrotechnics for Man or Astro Man was a great little callback for the more diehard fans. Plus, Mike and Joel finally meeting with an exchange of words. Don't compare yourself, man. It's not healthy. It truly is just a perfect episode. The only way it really could have been improved is if they brought in Dr. Forrester. But that would have been a stretch, and that might have probably killed the momentum. Soul Taker, my number 1 pick for the best MST3K episode ever. Honorable mention to Man Out of the Hands of Fate, the very first episode I ever saw, which was going to be the number 5 of this list, but in my heart, I just could not put it on the list. There were so many more deserving episodes.
My honorable mentions that I didn't mention are all of them. Well, Sampo finishes out.
Okay, my number 1. This is what I often refer to as my Desert Island episode. If I only had one at a DVD player and a really long extension cord, so that I could play it. And one episode, it would be Episode 610, The Violent Years. I just love that episode. There's not a foot gets put wrong in the whole thing, except for segment 2. Some people don't like Tom's tearful reenactment of A Star Is Born. Other than that, there's so much right about this episode. There's the wonderful Living in Deep 13 song. There's the theme songs of Mike and Crow and Tom Servo, especially Tom Servo's, which is just brilliant. There's the whole radio station called Frank, Mike as Keanu Reeves. There's just so much. Turn your crank to Frank. There's just so much going on there. And the movie is, of course, although we were, Josh and I were discussing this, it's not actually, there's no credit in the movie, in the episode, but it is widely reported to have been written by Ed Wood, and you can tell, I believe that it is, and there are a couple of lines in there that just sound so much like Ed Wood. There's at one point, one guy turns to the other guy and says, "What in the world is a slumber party?" That isn't an Ed Wood line. I don't know what it is. Just, and the whole, of course, the guy getting raped by the girls in the car, that whole business. There's so much happening. There's so much going on. It's just wonderful. And my favorite riff is "Rabbit with big guns and good aim," and that is my pick for number 1.
Great way to end. Anyway, gentlemen, that was our top 5. I enjoyed listing them. I'm sure most of them for me weren't a surprise. I was surprised by a couple of yours, Toby.
Really? I thought a lot of mine would have been no-brainers.
Yeah.
But I'm full of surprises.
Worth noting that we both like the episode that Sampo was a part of, but Sampo doesn't list that as his top 5.
No, it's a good one. It's a good one. I went to a Summerfest last weekend, as a matter of fact, and the balloons had convinced me it's fun.
Just shoving the irony down our throats. Well, thank you for giving us 20 episodes, listeners, and maybe we can do an episode next week. I don't know.
Perhaps.
We'll just have to see about that. Thank you, Mr. Cornell, Sampo,
no
for being a part of our show.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. Happy to have you.
We'd love to have you on in the future. I think we've said that, but
just let me know.
Okay, we'll reach that when the
time
comes.
You guys still need a lot of straightening out.
Yeah. I would say that you need a lot of straightening out with your facts, sir. And people on the boards are gonna say what a pompous jerk that guy is, but
probably.
But you know what? They're kind of right.
They're not wrong.
Yep.
I'm the last person who should say that.
I have nothing more to add. Anybody?
Push the button, Frank.